real still now.
How many of these 25 whitetail facts do you already know? And how many of the ones you do not know are the reason bucks keep showing up on your camera at 2 a.m. but never during shooting light? I have been hunting whitetails for 28 years, and I spent the first 15 of those years treating deer like big rabbits with antlers. I did not understand what I was hunting. I did not understand what a whitetail's nose actually does. I did not understand what its eyes can and cannot see. I did not understand why rut dates do not change even when the weather does. And every one of those gaps in my understanding cost me dear. The 25 facts in this video are not trivia. They are the operating manual for the animal you are trying to kill. And every single one of them has a direct application that will change how you hunt if you understand what it means in the field. Stay until the end because fact number 25 is the one that explains why the oldest bucks on your property are almost impossible to kill outside of one specific 10-day window every year, and understanding that window is the difference between hunting a ghost and hunting a deer. Number 1. A whitetail's nose has 297 million olfactory receptors. You have 5 million. That is not a small gap. That is a completely different biological category. A mature buck working downwind of your stand is not guessing that you are there. He is reading a detailed chemical message that tells him when you arrived, what surfaces you touched, whether you sweated on the walk in, and what you had for dinner last night. Your breath is part of that signature. What you ate 24 hours ago is being excreted through your skin and lungs while you sit in the stand. This is why wind management outperforms every other hunting tactic. You are not competing against a nose. You are competing against a chemical laboratory. I stopped for gas station coffee on the way to a stand in the Texas Panhandle one October morning and sat for 6 hours without seeing a single deer. My buddy in the next stand 400 yards away saw 11. Same wind, same property, same morning. The only difference was that I walked into a gas station that smelled like burned coffee and floor cleaner 45 minutes before climbing my tree. His entry was clean, mine was not. Those 297 million receptors read my entire morning routine before I ever reached the stand. Number 2, bucks lose up to 25% of their body weight during the rut. A 200-pound mature buck can drop to 150 pounds in 10 to 14 days of peak breeding. He is not eating, he is barely sleeping. He is covering 3 to 5 miles per day and fighting. The hunting application most people miss is that the post-rut buck, the one that survived the breeding chaos, is the most vulnerable mature deer of the entire season because his survival instincts have been temporarily overridden by weeks of physical depletion, and he is focused on one thing only: food. A stand on a late-season food source in the 3rd week of November catches these exhausted bucks doing something they almost never do the rest of the year, which is moving in daylight toward a predictable destination. Number 3. Antlers are the fastest growing bone tissue in the animal kingdom. They can grow up to 1 inch per day during peak growth in late spring. A buck growing a 150-inch rack deposits roughly 2 to 3 pounds of calcium and phosphorus in those antlers over 90 to 120 days, mobilized partly from his own skeleton. His ribs and facial bones actually thin during antler growth as mineral is redirected. This is why mineral sites from February through July produce such consistent trail camera traffic. The biological demand is real and measurable. Same principle behind the fermented ash stump video. The deer are not visiting your mineral site because they are curious. They are visiting because their skeleton is actively dissolving to build antlers and they need the calcium replaced. Number 4. Whitetails have 310 degrees of vision without moving their head, but their depth perception is poor. The binocular overlap zone, which is the area where both eyes work together to judge distance, is only about 60 degrees directly in front of them. Everything else is wide-angle motion detection with almost no depth assessment. Research from the University of Georgia confirmed this. A stationary hunter at 30 yards in full daylight who does not move is often not identified as a threat by a deer looking directly at the stand. The movement is what triggers recognition, not the presence. Your grandfather, who wore wool plaid and sat dead still, killed deer consistently. The science now explains why. I tested this with a buddy on a lease in North Florida, Panhandle, 2 years ago. He sat in full Sitka camo on a Matthews saddle platform, and I sat in a brown canvas jacket on a folding chair behind a brush pile. Same field edge, 80 yards apart. He moved to adjust his release 3 times during the sit. I sat still. The doe group that came out at 4:30 walked past me at 25 yards without a second look, and spooked from his position at 60 yards because he shifted his weight. The $400 camo lost to the $12 chair because the chair did not move. Number 5. Deer have a second scent processing system that humans do not have. In addition to their primary nose, deer have a vomeronasal organ, also called Jacobson's organ, in the roof of their mouth. This is the system activated during the Fleeman response, which is when a buck curls his upper lip after smelling urine. It processes chemical compounds, specifically pheromones, that the primary nose cannot detect. A buck performing the Fleeman response is not smelling the doe. He is tasting the chemical composition of her urine through a secondary sensory organ that has no equivalent in human anatomy. This is why doe urine applied to a scrape, which is a pawed-out patch of dirt where bucks leave scent as a communication station, produces a different response than any food attractant or cover scent. Number 6. Whitetails can sprint at 35 miles per hour and sustain 25 miles per hour for extended distances. The 35 is short-duration burst speed for fence clearance and initial escape. The 25 is what makes a bumped deer impossible to follow on foot, but the speed of the exit tells you more than you think. A deer that left at a moderate trot, head up, looking back, is far less alarmed than one that exploded at full sprint with its tail down. The trot deer may circle back within the hour. The sprint deer is not coming back that day. Number 7. A mature buck's home range shrinks during the rut. It does not expand. This contradicts what most hunters believe. GPS telemetry data shows that during peak rut, a mature buck does not randomly cover enormous territory. His overall range actually gets smaller, but his movement speed and intensity within that range increases dramatically, roughly 3 to 4 times faster than normal. He is not running 10 miles in random directions. He is covering his established range at high speed, checking every doe group he already knows. The buck that disappeared from your stealth cam cameras in early November is almost certainly still within your summer home range boundary. He is moving faster, not farther. I confirmed this on a 200-acre lease in eastern Kentucky, where I had summer camera data on a 4.5-year-old 10-point. He disappeared from all 6 cameras on October 28th, and I assumed he left the property. He showed up on a camera I had forgotten about on the far edge of the lease on November 4th, 600 yards from his summer core area. Same deer, same property. Just moving through his range at a pace and pattern that my camera grid could not keep up with. Everything in this video, plus 60 more field-tested techniques, is in the Buck Hunter's Bible. 90 pages of deer behavior, science scent control, scouting methods, stand placement, and rut phase tactics with a quick reference card you can take to the stand. Link in the description below, QR code on screen. Number 8. Whitetails have 4 stomach chambers and digest food twice. They are ruminants. They consume food rapidly at a feeding site, store it in the rumen, which is the first stomach chamber, then return to a safe bedding area and regurgitate it as cuid for thorough chewing and digestion. A deer that appears to feed for only 20 to 30 minutes at a food plot has collected hours worth of nutrition that it will process safely in its bed. The deer that feeds briefly and returns to timber before legal shooting light has not left the area. It is bedded within 200 to 400 yards, roughly 2 to 4 football fields, digesting what it collected. Your afternoon stand should intercept the route between bedding and food, not the food source itself. Number 9. Velvet antler is living tissue with a heartbeat. It contains an extensive network of blood vessels, nerves, and skin cells. The nerve endings make velvet antlers extremely sensitive to pain, which is why velvet bucks feed carefully around branches and rarely spar. The first week after velvet is shed in early September, the antlers are still slightly soft at the tips. Full hardening takes 2 to 3 weeks. A buck with fresh shed velvet is not yet at his aggressive peak. Number 10. Whitetails communicate through 7 different scent glands: forehead, preorbital, nasal, interdigital, tarsal, metatarsal, and prepucial. Most hunters know the tarsal gland, the dark-stained patch on the inside of the back legs. Most hunters know the interdigital gland between the hooves, which is what leaves scent with every step a deer takes. But the forehead and preorbital glands The ones bucks use most heavily on licking branches above scrapes are almost never discussed in mainstream hunting content, despite being the primary communication mechanism at every scrape location. A mock scrape that only addresses the ground and ignores the licking branch, which is the overhanging branch that bucks rub with their forehead and preorbital glands, is addressing one gland system and ignoring the two most active ones. Number 11. A doe's true standing estrus, the period when she will accept breeding, lasts exactly 24 hours. Not a week, not 3 days, 24 hours. The broader estrus cycle, including hormonal approach and decline, spans about 3 days. The rut that lasts a week at your hunting club is actually multiple individual does cycling through their own 24-hour windows across several weeks. The hunter who identifies which specific doe group is cycling on which specific dates is hunting with a precision that most hunters never achieve. Number 12. Mature bucks travel into the wind more than 80% of the time on primary travel routes. GPS telemetry data from bucks 3.5 years and older confirms a statistically significant preference for moving with their nose ahead of their body. A stand positioned correctly relative to prevailing wind intercepts these bucks on their natural approach. A stand positioned incorrectly sees the same buck pass 100 yards off to the side on the upwind route that keeps his nose in front of his movement. Most hunters set stands based on where they saw deer. The correct variable is the wind direction those deer were facing when they were seen. Number 13. Whitetails can detect movement at over 100 yards in low light conditions. The tapetum lucidum behind the deer's retina, which is a reflective layer you see when your headlamp catches their eyes at night, reflects available light back through the photoreceptors twice, effectively doubling their sensitivity at dawn and dusk. In the 20-minute window around first and last shooting light, a deer's motion detection is dramatically sharper than at any other time. A hunter climbing into an XOP stand at legal shooting light is being watched by every deer within 100 yards with complete clarity while the hunter can barely see 30 yards. The hunters who are settled and motionless before first light are hunting deer during their visual transition period. That is the only window where your disadvantage is partially offset. I arrive at my stands 45 minutes before legal shooting light now. Not 20 minutes, not 30, 45. Because those extra 15 minutes of sitting still in the dark are the difference between being settled when the first deer steps out and being caught mid-setup by a doe that is already looking at you with eyes that work better in the dark than yours do. Number 14. The rut date in your area has not changed in recorded history. It is triggered by decreasing day length, a physical constant called photoperiod that has not varied meaningfully in the history of North American deer hunting. Peak breeding dates in any given location shift by only 1 to 3 days from year to year. The deer your grandfather hunted peaked on the same week as the deer you hunt today. A warm November does not push the rut back. A cold October does not pull it forward. The weather changes how visible the activity is, not when it happens. This single fact would change how most hunters plan their season if they understood it. Stop waiting for a cold snap to hunt the rut. The rut is coming on the same dates regardless. The cold snap just makes the activity more visible because deer move more during daylight in cold temperatures. A warm rut is still a rut. You just see less of it because more of the movement happens at night. Number 15. Whitetails can clear an 8-foot fence from a standing start with no running approach. That is the height of a standard room ceiling from a dead stop. The muscle-to-body weight ratio that enables that jump is the same system that allows a wounded deer to cover 400 yards in terrain that stops a running human in 30 seconds. The fence crossing you, identified as a deer funnel, the worn grass under the bottom wire, represents the route deer choose when they are calm and habitual. A spooked deer crosses fences wherever it reaches them. Fence crossings as stand locations work because they represent relaxed, patternable movement. Number 16. A buck's neck can double in circumference during the rut, swelling from about 12 inches to 24 inches, roughly from the diameter of a dinner plate to the diameter of a truck tire, over 6 to 8 weeks of testosterone-driven muscle growth. This is visible on trail camera photos and is one of the most reliable indicators that a buck has entered full rut condition. A buck whose neck appears as wide as his shoulders in a September photo is an early cycling deer worth hunting sooner than your standard rut calendar suggests. Number 17. Whitetails use the Earth's magnetic field for navigation. Research published in the journal Zoology confirmed that deer show a preference for aligning their bodies along the north-south magnetic axis during feeding and bedding. A mature buck displaced 3 miles from his core area by hunting pressure will find his way back within days through terrain he has never traveled, using magnetic orientation combined with scent memory. The buck you bumped off your property during the rut is coming back. His navigation system is pointed home. Number 18. The olfactory bulb, the part of the brain that processes scent, occupies a proportionally larger volume of the whitetail's brain than in almost any other mammal. The brain itself is about the size of a tangerine, but the percentage dedicated to processing smell is enormous. Vision and hearing are tools for a deer. Smell is the operating system. A deer that loses vision in one eye continues to function normally. A deer whose sense of smell is compromised cannot survive. This is why wind management is not one strategy among many. It is the strategy. You are addressing the system that runs the entire animal. Number 19. Whitetails have been documented swimming over 2 miles in open water. Bucks during the rut swim rivers, lakes, and coastal bays to reach does on the opposite bank. A hunter on the outer banks of coastal North Carolina told me about a buck that swam across a half-mile sound during the second week of November. The water crossing that looks like a barrier on your topo map may not be a barrier at all during breeding season. Number 20. A doe with twins beds them 50 to 100 yards apart, roughly the length of one football field, and visits each separately to nurse. This reduces the probability that a single predator finds both fawns. The hunting application is more useful than it sounds. A doe that appears alone in a field and then walks purposefully into timber and comes back out 10 minutes later is not moving randomly. She is checking on a bedded fawn. That repeated movement pattern tells you exactly where her bedding corridor is and where to hang your stand to intercept her during the rut when the buck following her takes the same route. Number 21. Whitetails are physiologically addicted to sodium. Native browse across most of whitetail range is chronically sodium deficient, and deer will travel farther for a reliable sodium source than for any other single mineral. A $9 salt block from the farm store exploits a genuine biological craving that hunting pressure does not override. A sodium-deficient deer will visit a salt source even in areas where it has encountered human scent repeatedly, because the physiological drive outranks the learned caution. I tested this on a property in the western Nebraska sandhills, where deer pressure from neighboring ranches had pushed most daylight activity into a narrow creek bottom. A salt block placed 200 yards from the creek on a terrace bench pulled deer out of the bottom into open terrain on camera within 72 hours. The biological need beat the learned behavior. Look, everything I am walking through here is in the buck hunter's Bible. 90 pages, scent control, scouting, stand placement, rut tactics, plus a quick reference card for the stand. Link in the description, QR code on screen. Number 22. Buck fawns begin establishing home ranges at 6 months old. By October of their birth year, they are already traveling further from the doe family group and exploring terrain outside the maternal range. By their first spring, they have established a preliminary home range that, in most cases, they will occupy for the rest of their lives. The saddle, the ridge end, the creek crossing that produced a mature buck encounter on your property were selected by that deer before he had his first set of antlers. He chose those terrain features as a fawn. Those features will produce encounters with his replacements after he is gone. Number 23. A whitetail's resting heart rate is roughly 40 beats per minute. When fleeing, it exceeds 200. The cardiovascular system is proportionally enormous relative to body size, which is what gives them the explosive speed and endurance that makes recovery so difficult after a marginal shot. A mortally wounded deer running on adrenaline can cover 200 yards, roughly twice the length of a football field, in terrain that would stop a healthy human in 10 seconds. A deer that ran hard after the shot is not necessarily less seriously hit than one that walked away slowly. The adrenaline masks everything for those first seconds. Same principle from the after the shot mistakes video. Check the arrow before you follow the blood. The arrow tells you more than the deer's reaction did. Number 24. Dominant bucks chemically suppress the testosterone production of subordinate males through scent-based signaling, Subordinate bucks in a dominant buck's range show measurably lower testosterone levels during the rut than bucks of the same age class in areas without a dominant male. When that dominant buck is harvested mid-season, the suppression lifts. The subordinate bucks experience a rapid testosterone surge within 48 to 72 hours. Trail camera activity from previously quiet 3-year-olds spikes. The property that felt dead after you killed the big one is not dead. Those bucks were chemically muted. They are waking up. I saw this on a lease in eastern Kentucky 2 seasons ago. A buddy killed a 5.5-year-old 10-point on November 2nd, and within 4 days the camera activity from 3 younger bucks he had barely seen. All season went from 2 photos per week to 8 to 10 per day. All daylight, all cruising. The king was gone, and the court was in chaos. I have never seen anything like it on camera. 3 bucks that had been ghosts for 2 months, suddenly walking field edges at 10 a.m. like they owned the place. Because for the first time in their lives, they did. If you fill your big buck tag early in the rut, keep hunting. The next best week on your property might be the one right after. Number 25. This is the fact that ties every other one together, and the one I promised at the beginning. Whitetails have been documented living 20 years in the wild. The average lifespan in hunted populations is 2 to 3 years, but in low-pressure habitat, they reach 17 to 20. A 6.5-year-old buck, the age class most of us dream about, is roughly equivalent to a 40-year-old human in terms of life stage. He has survived 6 hunting seasons. He has processed more hunting-related threat experiences than most hunters have had total seasons in the woods. His pattern avoidance, his nocturnal timing, his response to calls, to scent, to headlamps, to stand noise. All of it is the product of years of education that no technique fully overcomes. The only consistent weakness of an old buck is the rut, the one biological drive that overrides his accumulated intelligence every single year. That 10-day window, roughly October 25th through November 7th, in most of the country north of the 35th parallel, when the calendar and the cold pull a nocturnal, educated, 6-year-old survivor into daylight movement, is the only reliable window you have. Every fact in this video, the nose, the eyes, the glands, the navigation, the cardiovascular system, the testosterone suppression, all of it converges during those 10 days. The rut is not a bonus round. It is the only round for the oldest bucks on your property. Be in the stand for it, every day, all day. Trust the biology, and let the deer make the one mistake he is programmed to make.